He held my elbow so gently, as if he were afraid I might break, while for 3 weeks, he had been putting into my tea, the very thing meant to stop my heart, along with my baby's. In the hallway of the Chicago Perinatal Center, his mistress laughed into my scarf and whispered, "Finally, this saint is tired of breathing." I heard everything through the slightly ajar door. The doctor leaned down to me and said, "Stay silent. You are not dying today." I closed my eyes. And for the first time in my marriage, I decided not to beg for mercy. "Look at yourself, Axinia." Ignatius leaned over me right above the hospital bed, adjusting his expensive cuffs. "You always wanted to be strong. Well, look at you now lying there like a wet rag." I didn't answer. There was a metallic taste in my mouth, my palms were icy, and my stomach pulled as if someone were tightening a hot wire inside me. On the end, monitor nearby, the thin line of my daughter's heartbeat pulsed steadily. I held onto that sound like a handrail in a dark stairwell. Malolika stood behind his back in my cashmere coat. Not a similar one. It was mine. I recognized the small snag on the sleeve that I had been planning to take to the tailor myself. "She's just silent now." Malolika wrinkled her nose. "Ignat, maybe there's nothing left for her to think with?" "You said the poison works gently." The doctor, Lev Samsonovich, stood by the window as if checking the IV drip, but his knuckles had turned white against his tablet. Ignatius smiled at me. It wasn't a lover's smile, not the one he used to greet me at restaurants when he was still pretending to admire me. It was the smile of a man who had finally removed his mask and was waiting for applause. "Your firm is almost mine," he said quietly. "Your signature is where it needs to be. Your mom won't understand a thing. And the child." He cast a glance at my belly and shrugged. "Don't be dramatic. Nature sometimes removes the excess on its own." I slowly turned my head. My throat hurt, but my voice came out steady. "The excess is standing right by my bed." He blinked. Malolika stopped smiling abruptly. Lev Samsonovich looked up, and in his eyes, I didn't see pity. I saw a decision. "My name is Aksenia Radomskaya. I am not an heiress to an empire, nor a cover girl. I owned a chain of cold, noisy, diesel-scented warehouses on the outskirts of Chicago that I built up after my father's death, back when everyone told me to sell the land to the first developer. Ignatius Krechetov didn't come to me with love. He came with a calculator. Only I realized it too late. That evening, I was supposed to just check in for observation. I was told, stress, blood pressure, the pregnancy is difficult, you need to take care of yourself. I walked to the admission desk myself, because Ignatius was stuck in a meeting. In reality, he was sitting one floor up in a paid lounge with Malolika, discussing how quickly he could take control of my assets if I weren't around. I didn't know this until Lev Samsonovich returned to the room after their visit. He locked the door. Then he walked to the sink, turned on the water, and only then did he speak. "Aksenia Pavlovna, listen to me carefully. A substance has been introduced into your system, and not just today. Tests will show it, but not immediately. You didn't go into labor on your own." I stared at him and couldn't breathe. "The baby? Alive. Strong heartbeat. She's fighting. I hadn't told anyone it was a girl yet. Not even Ignatius. I hadn't had. In the time. Or maybe I didn't want to. Somewhere inside, I must have realized, before my body did that, you can't give him anything real." "Did they poison me?" I asked. Lev Samsonovich didn't look away. "I heard the conversation. Not all of it. Enough. Your husband talked about a power of attorney, about signatures, and that if you survived, they would press harder." The woman with him asked what to do about the baby. He said, "That's not a child, that's a risk." The world didn't collapse. Strange, but it didn't. It became very clear. The drop on the IV tube, the scratch on the metal stand, the white thread on the sending doctor's collar, the smell of iodine, and my daughter inside, who kicked my rib so sharply it was as if she were ordering me not to lie there. "What do you suggest?" I said. He sat down nearby. Officially, right now, I am fighting for your life. Unofficially, I will get you out of his reach. I have a colleague in toxicology, a criminal defense lawyer I know, and a senior investigator whose son I once saved. But you must do exactly what I say. No heroism. No calls to your husband. No scenes. I smiled. It seemed like the first time in months. The scene will come later. He looked at me intently. Then stay alive for it. The operation began at night. Not beautiful, not cinematic, no loud music. Just lights, masks, commands, cold skin, and a fear that had no right to come out. I heard Lev Samsonovich say, "Hold the pressure, more. Don't let go." Then I heard the first cry. Not loud. Hoarse. Angry. Small. But it was the sound of victory. A girl, someone said, breathing on her own. I tried to open my eyes, but my lids had turned to stone. Lev Samsonovich leaned over me. "You have a daughter, Aksenia. Small, angry, and very stubborn." I whispered. "Who could she have gotten that from?" He chuckled behind his mask. "We'll find out." When I woke up, the room was different. Not my expensive private suite with a back view of Lake Michigan, where Ignatius could waltz in with a bouquet and a camera. It was a small utility room in another wing, without a nameplate on the curtain door. Nearby, in a plastic crib, my daughter slept. Her nose was tiny, her lips a perfect heart, her fists clenched as if she were already preparing a lawsuit. Sitting on a chair was a woman with a short haircut and a briefcase on her lap. "I'm Renata Mansurova, your attorney," she said. "Your doctor told me your situation. I won't ask if you want to punish your husband. I can see by your face that you do. I want him to show everyone exactly who he is," I said. Renata raised an eyebrow slightly. "Good. Then we'll work beautifully." At first, we didn't go to the police openly. Lev Samsonovich documented my condition such that outsiders were told, complications, patient unstable, no visitors allowed, baby under observation. No one told Ignatius about my death, and that was worse for him. A dead wife could be buried quickly with rumors. A living but unreachable one had to be waited out. He waited poorly. By morning, he arrived with a massive bouquet of white roses. He turned on the wrecked camera in the hallway himself. I saw the footage later. He stands at the nurse's station, his face suffering, his voice soft. "I'm her husband. I have to be with her." The nurse, an older, dry woman, the kind who can stop a queue at registration, with a single glance didn't even look up. "You can't. You don't understand. She's emotionally unstable. She might say things she doesn't mean. All the more reason you can't." Malolika stood behind his shoulder wearing dark glasses, even though there was no sun in the hallway. She held her phone so that her face and the bouquet were visible. "Poor Ignat," she whispered loud enough to be heard. "They won't even let him see his own wife. How cruel." The nurse looked at her over her glasses. "Ma'am, this is a maternity ward, not a theater." That phrase would later become the first splinter in their legend. Because Malolika posted a story with the caption, "When love is blocked from reaching a sick wife." But for some reason, people in the comments didn't latch onto the poem, love, but onto the coat. My coat. One of my employees recognized it instantly. "Why is she wearing Aksenia's things?" The comment was deleted. Then a second appeared. Then a 10th. Ignatius always thought people were stupid. He was wrong. People are lazy, busy, and annoyed, but they aren't blind when you give them a thread to pull. Renata brought me my phone only on the third day. Before that, I lay there, fed my daughter with pumped milk, learned to walk after the surgery, and hated myself for my weakness, until the moment Lev Samsonovich said, "The weak don't survive this. You're just wounded." I held the phone like a foreign object. There were 78 missed calls. From Ignatius, 41 messages, several voice notes. I didn't listen myself. Renata put them on speaker while she screen recorded. The first message was tender. "Ksyushenka, my love, I'm worried. The doctors are animals. Call me." The second was annoyed. "I need access to your documents for the hospital. Can you remember the safe code?" The third had no decorations. "Don't you dare throw a tantrum. You brought this state upon yourself. The fourth he recorded at night. His voice was thick, drunk. You don't understand who keeps you afloat. Without me, your warehouses will be eaten by creditors. I'm the only one who knows how to talk to people. Give me the authority and get some rest. Stop playing the holy martyr. I looked out the window. Chicago beyond the glass was gray, wet, and real. There was no luxury in it, no cinema. Just a janitor dragging a wet bag. A bus. Snorting at a stop. A woman arguing on her phone somewhere. And for some reason, that brought me back to life. The world hadn't stopped because of my betrayal. Therefore, I wasn't obligated to stop either. Shall we reply? Renata asked. One message. I took the phone and typed, Ignatius, you're in too much of a hurry. He called within seconds. Renata nodded. The recording started. Finally, his voice was sweet, but there was grinding metal beneath it. My love, you scared me. How? You disappeared. The doctors won't let anyone in. You're silent. I'm your husband. For now, yes. A pause. What do you mean, for now? I turned my head to the crib. My daughter was sleeping, pouting her lips. Comically. It means I've learned to count the days. He exhaled into the phone. You're at it again. You shouldn't be nervous. The doctor said your psyche is unstable. Which doctor? Don't pick at words. You lie poorly when you're in a rush. And you don't think well when you're in pain, he snapped. Listen to me. We have the documents. You signed the transfer of temporary management. It's reasonable. I'm saving the company while you lie there. Renata looked up at the word signed. When? I asked. Don't start. When did I sign? Before hospitalization. You forgot. You were having memory lapses. I smiled so hard the stitches pulled. I don't have memory lapses, Ignat. I have recordings. He was silent for so long that I heard a woman's whisper in the background. What did she say? Malolika asked. Shut up, he hissed, not at me. Give her back the coat, I said. Tell her to fix the sleeve, it's tacky too. Steal things with snags. I hung up. Renata smiled widely for the first time. That was useful. For the case? For the soul. For the case too. The following days became a strange war without shots. Ignatius started moving on the documents. He brought a power of attorney to the bank, supposedly signed by me 2 days before hospitalization. The bank froze the operations after Renata's call, but pretended they were conducting an internal audit. That was necessary. We wanted him to think he had almost made it. He sent an order to the company's lawyers to replace the CEO with himself. The lawyers whom I paid not for smiles, but for having a backbone forwarded everything to Renata and answered him dryly. We require personal confirmation. From Aksenia Pavlovna, he sent a voice note to my financial director. Valery, she's not herself. I'm making the decisions. Don't make me remember. Who signs your bonuses? Valery came to see me that evening with a bag of tangerines. He didn't cry. He was a man whose emotions looked like an accounting error. You signed the bonuses, he said. And he even held the stamp upside down. I laughed. And it was the first laugh that didn't hurt. Valera, did you know? That he's a scoundrel? Yes. That he's a murderer? No. Those are different. Tarifs. He placed a flash drive on the table. These are recordings from the office cameras. He was digging through your office when you were at home with morning sickness. Twice. Once with a woman. She was photographing folders. Renata took the flash drive. The woman in the red coat? In a stolen coat, Valery said. That was how Malolika entered the case, not as a poor family friend, but as an accomplice who held the phone over the documents herself. Her real last name wasn't the pretty stage name Lika Varesk, under which she ran a channel about feminine energy and life without shame. On her passport, she was Militsa Borisyuk. She sold courses teaching women not to wait for permission for happiness. Judging by my coat, she took happiness literally. Renata suggested going straight to the investigative committee. Lev Samsonovich insisted on one more analysis to link the substance to a specific supplier. The investigator, a colonel named Knyazev, arrived at night, out of uniform. He was short, with heavy eyelids, and the voice of a man who never raises his tone. Because everyone hears him anyway. He listened to me, Lev Samsonovich, and Renata. Then he asked to see my daughter. Not out of curiosity. He looked at her as if she weren't evidence, but the cause. Name, he asked. Varvara. A strong one. She chose it herself. Kniazev nodded. Then we'll make sure she doesn't grow up in a world where this can be written off as a family conflict. I remembered that phrase. Family conflict. That's what a knife is often called, if it lies between husband and wife. That's what poison is often called if it's served in a beautiful cup. A week later, they found the pharmacy chain where the components were bought. Not directly. Through a pharmacist, my Lolika knew. Through burner cards. Through a delivery to an apartment rented for a day in Zelenodolsk. Ignatius thought he had covered his tracks because he watched TV shows and thought he was smarter than the investigators. But in real life, people leave receipts, cameras, geolocation, text messages, and stupid phrases in messengers. My Lolika wrote to the pharmacist. The main thing is that it looks like a pregnancy miscarriage, no crime. The pharmacist replied. Are you crazy? She wrote back. I'm the future owner, don't be jealous. When Renata read this aloud, I didn't feel pain. Only a cold convenience. As if I had been handed a clean bread knife. Owner, I repeated. Let her come out to the guests then. What guests? Kniazev asked. I looked at the calendar. In 2 weeks, we were supposed to have the annual meeting of the Radomskaya Logistics Group partners. Not a posh ball. Not crystal chandeliers. Not billionaires in tuxedos. A large conference room in a hotel by the embankment. Regional suppliers, bankers, lawyers, landlords, transport company heads, people who were used to believing not in tears, but in reconciliation acts. Ignatius had already sent out an updated agenda. Due to the spouse's serious condition, temporary management is taken over by Ignatius Krichetov. And at the bottom, in Desaim, a small line, he added. With the support of Militsa Borisyuk, consultant for reputation development. I showed Renata the letter. She whistled. He's bringing his mistress to your meeting? No, I said. He's bringing evidence. And that was when the plan became simple. Not noble, not beautiful, not for a textbook, but it worked. We didn't warn Ignatius that the statement had already been filed. We didn't argue with his rumors. He started telling partners that I had postpartum psychosis, that the child was in serious condition, that I had signed everything voluntarily but then got scared. Renata collected screenshots. Valery saved the emails. The nurse from the desk wrote an explanation about the Lay's attempts at pressure. Lev Samsonovich provided the toxicology results and an axicology results official report. Kniazev silently put everything into a folder that was becoming thicker than our family life. And I learned to walk fast. Every morning, I walked down the hall of the service wing. First to the water cooler. Then to the elevator. Then to the window, from which you could see a piece of the river. The stitches pulled. My head spun, but I walked. Varvara ate, slept, got angry, wrinkled her nose like a little security department head. Sometimes I felt like I was holding on only because she didn't ask if she was allowed to live. She just lived. Lev Samsonovich came by after his shift, not like a hero. Tired, in a wrinkled robe, with coffee that smelled of hospital insomnia. Any news? I'd ask. Your husband brought a notary today. To the hospital? Yes. Said you were urgently asking to renounce your shares. And? The notary saw me and said, I'm not getting into this. Left faster than she came. I closed my eyes. He was always arrogant. I mistook it for confidence. Lev Samsonovich set the coffee cup on the windowsill. Many do. Until the arrogance starts calculating the dosage. We were silent. There was no romance between us. There was a room, blood, documents, a baby in a crib, and the knowledge that a stranger had done more for me than my husband had in our entire marriage. It was a dangerous knowledge. I kept it at a distance, like a hot cup. Why did you intervene? I asked one day. He didn't answer immediately. Because I heard the word risk about a child. And I realized that if I stayed silent, I would keep treating people with hands I no longer trusted. Do you always talk like that? How? Briefly, and in a way that leaves nothing to add. He felt embarrassed for the first time. No. Usually, I say, breathe evenly. That works for me too. The day before the meeting, Ignatius recorded a video. He sat in my office, at my desk, against the background of the bookcase my father had collected. He wore the dark blue suit I had given him for our anniversary. Malolika stood to the side, off camera, but her bracelets jingled. Friends, he began, it's a difficult time for our family right now. Aksinya is undergoing treatment. I ask you not to believe the dirty rumors. Business must live. I am taking the responsibility upon myself. Responsibility. He pronounced that word as if he hadn't hidden poison in my buckthorn tea. Then he made a mistake. Some people are trying to use my wife's illness against me. But I forgive them. For the sake of our family. For the memory of who she was before this tragedy. Who she was, as if I had already become a photograph. Malolika posted a story right after. Black background, white letters, her face. Without makeup, but with perfect lighting. Sometimes you have to be strong for the man who is being broken by circumstances. And then she added a selfie in the mirror. She was wearing my amber earrings. The ones my father gave me after my first big deal. I looked at the screen and didn't feel rage. Rage is noisy, it gets in the way of thinking. A silence rose within me. Renata asked, ready? I adjusted the blanket on Varvara. I was ready the moment he said risk. I didn't arrive at the meeting in a limousine. I came in an ordinary black minivan with a baby seat. Renata sat nearby, folder in hand. Lev Samsonovich traveled separately. He was to testify as a witness, not as my savior. Knyazov and his team were already in the building, but no one knew that. Valery waited at the service entrance, nervously wiping his glasses. You look terrible, he said instead of a greeting. Thank you, Valera. I mean, convincingly. Alive, but angry. Now thank you. I wore a gray coat, not my stolen one, a different one. Simple, wide, hair pulled, low. No makeup. I didn't need to look like a winner. I needed to look like someone they hadn't finished off. I left Varvara with the nurse in the car under guard. Not because I was afraid to show her. Because Ignatius didn't deserve to see her first in a crowd. He was already speaking in the conference hall. I heard his voice from the hallway. Aksinya was always impulsive. Those who worked nearby know. She could make decisions based on emotions. Now my task is to preserve the assets, the staff, and the group's reputation. Malolika sat at the presidium table, in a white suit, with my earrings. Her lips were glossy. She nodded as if she were saving an orphanage, not waiting for my death. A hotel security guard stood by the door. He recognized me and froze. Aksinya Pavlovna? I put a finger to my lips. He threw the door open. Ignatius had just said, unfortunately, my wife is currently incapable of personally confirming. I walked in. The room didn't gasp immediately. First, people just stopped moving. A cup froze at someone's mouth. The camera stopped clicking. Valerie behind me said quietly, good afternoon, though it wasn't the time for pleasantries. Ignatius saw me and didn't go pale. He went gray. His face became blank, like a turned-off screen. Malolika grabbed the edge of the table. The amber earrings swayed at her neck. I walked to the front row. Not fast. The stitches were a reminder that the body isn't a prop. But every movement was mine, not his. Continue, I said. You stopped at my incapacity. Ignatius opened his mouth, then closed it. Then he remembered people were watching. Aksinya, thank God. You should have warned us. The doctors said you shouldn't. Lee? Be nervous, he forced out. I'm calm. Milolika stood up. This is cruel, Aksinya. Ignatius hasn't slept for nights. He suffered. I looked at her ears. Did he suffer in my earrings? A whisper went through the room. Malolika jerked her hand toward her earlobe. He gave them to me. As a sign of support. He doesn't give away things that aren't his. He temporarily holds on to stolen goods. Ignatius slammed his palm on the table. Enough. You're sick. Everyone sees the state you're in. You came here to put on a circus for the partners. No, I said. The circus was already running. I came to turn off the music. Renata stepped out beside me and put the folder on the table. Her voice was dry, almost boring. Distinguished meeting participants. Before you is the attorney for Aksenya, Pavlovna Radomskaya. This meeting is being recorded. Please stay in your seats. Ignatius laughed. Badly. Too loudly. Being recorded? Please. Go ahead. Record how a mentally unstable woman is. Disrupting corporate procedure. I turned to the screen. Valera. The financial director pressed a button. A video from the hospital corridor appeared on the large screen. Ignatius with a bouquet. Malolika in my coat. Her voice. Maybe there's nothing left for her to think with? You said the poison works gently. The room inhaled as one body. Ignatius jumped up. It's a montage. Sit down, one of the partners said. He turned sharply. What? It was Safarov, the owner of a fleet I argued with every January over rates. A huge man with a face carved out of fatigue. Sit down, I said. Let's watch it to the end. The next file was Malolika's correspondence with the pharmacist. Then a recording of Ignatius's call where he said, "She signed because she has memory lapses." Then a video from my office where Malolika photographs folders while Ignatius holds the door. Malolika tried to smile. This is taken out of context. The context is simple, Renata said. Forgery of power of attorney. Attempted. Illegal takeover. Poisoning of a pregnant woman. Shall I continue? Poisoning? Ignatius pointed at me. You drank all those herbs yourself. You drove yourself to this. I warned you that your work would kill the baby. I took a step toward him. You tried to kill my baby. He recoiled as if I had hit him. Don't you dare say that. I'm her father. A father doesn't call his daughter a risk. The silence became so thick that you could hear the snap of Milolika's handbag. She slowly moved away from the table. Lika, Ignatius turned to her. Tell them she made it up. She hates us. Milolika raised her hands. I don't even know what you're talking about. Ignatius, you told me Aksenya was just sick. I wanted to help. He stared at her. You found the person yourself. What person? Her voice went thin. Are you hallucinating? This was love in its purest form. As long as they were dividing my property, they were a team. As soon as prison time loomed, they became orphans. Knyazov entered through the side door without haste. 2 officers followed him. He didn't dramatize. He just showed his badge. Ignatius Olegovich Krechetov, Militsa Andreevna Borisyuk. You are under arrest, on suspicion of committing a series of crimes, including attempted murder, fraud. Hands on the table. Milolika screamed first. This is a mistake. I'm a blogger. I have a live stream in an hour. Knyazov looked at her with interest. You'll reschedule. Ignatius didn't scream. He looked at me. Something human finally appeared in his Fortias. Face. Not repentance. Fear. Aksenya, he said quietly. You won't let this happen. We're family. I stepped closer. He reached for me, but the officer pressed his hand to the blank. Table. You wanted to leave me with an urn and a signature, I said. The family ended. There. I snapped. Lika was pressuring me. Money, debts, the bank. You don't know what it's like to be around you. Everyone looks at you, and it's like I don't exist. Now they will see you. Please, he almost whispered. For the sake of the child. I leaned in so he could hear every word. Her name is Varvara, and you will only say that name in a deposition. His cheek twitched. The handcuffs clicked. Malolika was still repeating. I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with it. But every repetition sounded cheaper. Before they were let out, she suddenly turned to me. You think you won? You'll be left alone. With a baby. With a scar. Everyone will pity you. I took the amber earring from her ear. She didn't even have time to flinch. Pity is worn by those who steal other people's things. I wear my own. Safarov was the first to stand up. Others followed. No applause. That would have been vulgar. People just rose. The way they stand when not a boss, but a truth that people didn't want to see, enters the room. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in the elevator. Not in the car. Only when I took Varvara into my arms did she open her eyes and look at me with a dark, murky, infant gaze, as if checking, "Well, did you handle it?" I pressed her to me. "Almost," I whispered. "There's still the trial. How would you have acted in my place? Would you have struck immediately? Or would you also have let your enemies open their mouths wide enough to hang themselves?" Then the dirt started. Not the kind in the movies where the villain stays silent until the verdict. Real dirt, sticky, small, humiliating. Ignatius tried to prove, through his lawyer, that I was dangerous for the child. Milolika gave an interview to a small channel where she cried on camera and said she was a victim of a wealthy woman with postpartum jealousy. Her subscribers initially wrote, "Curses at me." Then someone found old videos of her dancing in my coat the day before my surgery. Then her messages about the future owner surfaced. The internet can be cruel, but sometimes it's cruel in the right direction. Renata didn't enjoy the noise. "The web isn't a court," she said. But judges also read the news over breakfast. I gave one interview. One. No tears, no makeup, with Varvara off camera. The journalist asked, "What was the scariest part?" I replied, "Not the poison. The scariest part was realizing that the man who rubbed my poison belly considered my child an obstacle. Do you want revenge?" "No. Revenge ends quickly. I want every document to live longer than their lease." That phrase spread through channels. It was used as avatars, discussed, argued, over. Some said I was cold. Some said I was strong. I didn't care. Cold steel cuts better than hot. The trial dragged on for months. Ignatius lost weight, stopped being handsome. Beauty in such men rests on confidence, like an expensive suit on hangers. Remove the hangers, and the fabric sags. He came to the courtroom with downcast eyes, but as soon as the press cameras turned on, he adopted the face of a martyr. At the first hearing, he said, "I loved my wife. Yes, we had difficulties. Yes, I had an affair with another woman. But I never wished for death." The prosecutor played the recording from the hospital hallway. His voice. "If she survives, we'll have to finish it." The judge looked up. "Defendant, is this your voice?" Ignatius pursed his lips. "It sounds like it. But the meaning is distorted." "In what way?" I was speaking emotionally. I sat in the third row. Renata placed a palm on my wrist, warning, "Stay silent." But Ignatius looked straight at me and added, "Aksenia always knew how to push people." I looked up. The judge said strictly, "Plaintiff, do not answer from your seat." I nodded. But Ignatius saw my look and turned away first. Milolika held herself differently. She came in a beige suit, without jewelry, with the face of an innocent honor student. Her lawyer built his line on the face. Fact that she was romantically dependent on Ignatius, believed his words, didn't understand medical terms, and generally thought they were talking about calming drops. Then the prosecutor read her message. "The dose needs to be increased, otherwise. She's like a horse. Milolika sobbet." "That's a joke." The judge took off her glasses. "About a pregnant woman in a serious condition?" I was having a nervous breakdown. I thought they all had the same dictionary. Breakdown, emotions, pressure, circumstances. Only for some reason, I was the one with the test results, the scar, and the child they called a risk. Lev Samsonovich testified for a long time. Clearly, without fluff. He explained how the toxin accumulated, why the labor started unnaturally, why coincidence was excluded. Ignatius's lawyer tried to derail him. "Doctor, did you personally see my client add the substance to his wife's drinks?" "No." "Then it's an assumption." "No." "Explain." Lev Samsonovich looked at him the way one looks at a man who spit on an epicenter operating table. "I am a doctor. I don't have to see a person pull the trigger to diagnose a tract gunshot wound." Someone in the room let out a quiet breath. The lawyer sat down. After the session, Lev approached me in the hallway. "Are you holding up?" "I'm counting my breaths." "Does it help?" No. But staying busy creates the illusion of control. He smiled. You have a rare talent for turning pain into a report. You have a rare talent for giving compliments like an expert witness. We both laughed, briefly, cautiously. And suddenly I realized I could laugh in a courthouse. Not because I felt light. Because they didn't even take that away. Ignatius tried to negotiate. Through his lawyer, he offered to plead guilty to the forgery, but not the poisoning. Then he offered a settlement on the property division. Renata read the letter aloud and didn't even try to hide her disgust. He wants to give up his claim on the shares in exchange for your motion for a graptorum. Lighter sentence. So he's offering to let me buy back my own life? In legal terms, yes. Reply. The item is no longer for sale. Renata wrote exactly that. Then she said, I'd go a bit softer. No. Sending it then. The verdict was announced on a gray day when the snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air smelled of wet iron. I left Varvara at home with my mom. Mom became quieter. After everything. She didn't wail, didn't curse Ignatius. Just once, she went through my cups, found that very sea buckthorn one I used to drink from in the evenings, and silently smashed it in a bag with a hammer. Mom, I said. She tied the bag. I don't want you to take it by mistake. That was her entire speech on pain. In court, Ignatius stood, clutching the edge of the bench. My Lolika stared to the floor. The judge read for a long time. Attempted murder, forgery, fraud, illegal access to commercial information, slander. The words fell one after another like heavy boxes in a warehouse. Ignatius was sentenced to a long term of imprisonment. My Lolika too less, but enough for her courses on free feminine energy to end behind state bars. The pharmacist got his term for aiding and abetting. The notary, who was initially ready to help the family, lost her license because the correspondence showed too much interest in my assets. When the judge finished, Ignatius suddenly turned to me. Aksinya, he shouted. You didn't have the right. I made you a woman. Before. Me, you lived in a warehouse among men in crates. The guard yanked his sleeve. He struggled forward, red, sweaty, no longer handsome, not a strategist, not a husband, just a man who had lost and wanted to stain the air with a final phrase. I stood up. The judge looked at me strictly but didn't stop me. You made me a widow while you were still alive, I said. The rest I did. Myself. He went silent. Not because he understood. Because there was nothing left to answer. My Lolika also tried to exit beautifully. You'll regret this, she hissed as she was led past. Women like you are of no use to anyone. I looked at her calmly. Women like me don't wait to be chosen. She turned away first. After the trial, the press waited at the entrance. Microphones, cameras, questions. What do you feel? Will you file a civil lawsuit? Is it true this company lost a major contract? Have you forgiven your husband? I stopped only for the last question. Forgiveness isn't a delivery service. You can't order it to arrive with the fine verdict. And I walked away. We filed civil lawsuits later, returned the stolen goods, blocked the deals, extracted compensations. Not fairy tale sums, not movie billions, but real money. For real harm, medical expenses, reputational damage, the attempted hostile takeover, moral damages. All the money that came from the sale of his property, I didn't keep for myself. I opened a legal aid foundation for women who, in hospitals and police stations, are too often asked, Are you sure you aren't exaggerating? Mom came up with the name for the fund. Varvara. I objected at first. I don't want to tie her name to this horror. Mom shook her head. She didn't experience the horror. She experienced the victory. The company survived. For the first few months, partners looked at me with caution, like a person after a fire. Then they saw I hadn't collapsed, and they started arguing about rates, deadlines, and penalties again. It was wonderful. Normal life doesn't return with music, but with annoying emails at 6 in the praised morning. Valerie once brought me a report and said, We have growth. After an attempt on the owner? The reputation of honesty is sometimes more expensive than advertising. Valera, You just said something almost inspiring. Please don't record that in the minutes. Lev Samsonovich kept stopping by. First for medical reasons. To check the stitches, the tests, Varvara's condition. Then there were fewer reasons, but for some reason, the visits didn't stop. He brought her funny socks, me coffee, without sugar, Mom halva, because he once heard she loved the Kazan kind, with peanuts. For a long time, I pretended not to notice how Varvara calmed down in his arms, faster than in anyone else's. He held her confidently but carefully, as one holds not a friend's child, but a small miracle for which they had once already answered before death. You aren't obligated to come, I told him one day. We sat in the kitchen. March snow was melting outside. Varvara slept in her stroller by the radiator. Mom demonstratively went to the store, even though there were 3 loaves of bread. I know, he said. Then why? He looked at me directly. Because I want to. Such simple words frightened me more than the trial. Lev Samsonovich. Lev, he corrected. After everything, we can drop the patronymic. Lev. I don't know how to trust men right now. And you don't have to right now. Is that enough for you? It's enough for me that you're telling the truth. I turned to the window. A janitor was breaking ice with a crowbar, stubbornly, methodically, as if the whole world consisted of people who just did what was necessary, without demanding applause. I don't promise to be easy, I said. I'm an obstetrician-gynecologist, Aksenya. I've seen almost no easy processes. I laughed. And for the first time, I didn't stop myself. I rarely heard about Ignatius. Renata sometimes reported dry facts. Complaint. Dismissed. Cassation didn't help. Property being liquidated. Debt collected. He wrote me letters. The first ones were angry, then pathetic, then religious, even. Though for years of marriage he confused Easter with Trinity, I didn't read. And them. I put them in a box that Renata called the Museum of Manipulation. Mom once asked, why keep them? I thought about it. So Varvara won't hear someone else's version first someday. Mom nodded. Then keep them. But don't open them at night. I didn't. Malolika tried to run her channel from the colony through acquaintances. Wrote texts about a woman broken by envy. But her followers no longer wanted to buy her pain. There were too many screenshots where she called my daughter a risk, me a sack of assets, and Ignatius a ticket to a beautiful life. Her name became not a brand, but a warning. Sometimes the dirtiest revenge isn't to scream, just let a person talk until the end. A year after the trial, I held a partner meeting in that same hall for the first time. Not on purpose, it was just the only hall free on the required date. I walked in and stopped for a second. The body remembers faster than the head. That's where Ignatius stood. That's where Malolika jerked her hand toward her. Earrings. At that column, Knyazev showed his badge. Valery asked quietly, shall we reschedule? I shook my head. No. The rent is paid. He sighed respectfully. Now that's an argument. I went out to the partners. I wore a dark green suit, my father's amber, earrings, and a thin scar under my clothes that no one saw. I talked about new warehouses, routes, insurance, digital accounting systems, ordinary boring, things from which freedom is built. At the end, Safarov raised his hand. Aksenya Pavlovna, can I ask a personal question? The room tensed. Go ahead. How's the girl? I smiled. Varvara bit the pediatrician's finger yesterday. Safarov nodded seriously. Then she's yours. The room laughed. And in that laughter, Ignatius's shadow finally vanished from the room. Lev didn't propose against the backdrop of a sunset or in a restaurant. He did, it in my hallway, when Varvara smeared puree on his shirt. Mom was fussing in the kitchen, and I was trying to find a second baby sock. He stood in the middle of this chaos, in a white shirt with an orange spot, and suddenly said, Aksenya, I want to be here always. I froze with the sock in my hand. In the hallway? In your life. In Varvara's. In this kitchen, where your mom pretends she isn't. Eavesdropping. From the kitchen came, I'm not pretending. He took out a small box. Not luxurious. Simple. Inside was a ring with dark, amber, almost the same as my earrings. I don't ask you to forget, he said. I don't ask you to trust immediately. I ask you to let me prove every day that love shouldn't smell like fear. I looked at him and thought about how strangely life is arranged. One man rubbed my belly and considered the child an obstacle. Another met my daughter in blood and fear, and then came into my hallway with a spot of puree on his shirt and looked happy. I'm afraid, I said honestly. Me too. What are you afraid of? That you'll say no, and your mom will force me to finish the cutlets anyway. Mom yelled. He'll finish the cutlets either way. I laughed and cried at the same time. Varvara clapped her palms on the floor, not understanding what was happening, but approving of the noise. I said, yes. Lev exhaled as if he had just come out of the operating room. We got married quietly. No white doves, no banquet hall, no people who came to banquet hall. See that very Aksenia. Mom, Valery, Renata, Lev Samsonovich now just. Lev Varvara in a dress she immediately stained with a cookie. Knyazev sent a bouquet and a card. May the next protocol in your life only be a marital one. Renata said it was the worst congratulation she'd ever seen and carefully placed the card in a prominent spot. After the ceremony, we went not to a restaurant, but to my old warehouse by the restaurant highway. Yes, it sounds strange, but that's where everything started before Ignatius. That's where my father taught me to distinguish honest work from pretty talk. That's where, at 20-something, I stood in dirty boots, argued with drivers who called me girl. That's where I first realized I didn't need to be chosen for me to exist. Lev got out of the car, looked at the rows of gates, the forklifts, the people, in vests. Romantic, he said. Very. This is a good driveway for semi-trucks. He took my hand. I already love this place. Because of the driveway? Because you became yourself here before someone tried to rewrite you. I didn't find an answer. Sometimes the strongest words don't require an answer. They just become a shelf inside you that you can lean on. Years passed. Varvara grew up stubborn, fast, funny. She knew she had a biological father who made a terrible choice. We didn't lie. We didn't share details at breakfast. But we didn't build a fairy tale about a fallen pilot. Either. When she was old enough to ask directly, she asked, didn't he love me? I sat down next to her on the rug. Lev stood in the doorway, but didn't intervene. He didn't know how to love anyone but himself. Is it my fault? I took her face in my palms. You were the reason I survived. Not the reason for his evil. She thought about it. Then she asked, and Lev? Lev said quietly from the door, I'm here if the question is for me. Varvara looked at him. Would you have chosen me? He knelt before her. I already did. The first night, when you screamed louder than anyone in the prospectus. Or, I screamed? Like a boss. She nodded contentedly. Okay then. And she ran off to find the cat. I sat on the rug and felt the old fear finally release one more finger. Not all of it. Things like that don't disappear completely. But they stop controlling the doors in your house. Sometimes I dreamed of the hospital corridor. White roses. The coat on someone else's shoulders. Ignatius's voice. It's a risk. I would wake up, sit in the Basazur, dark, and listen to the house breathe. Varvara behind the wall. Mom sometimes. Snoring in the guest room when she stayed over. Lev nearby, warm, real. He didn't ask again. He just reached out. Breathe evenly, he would say sleepily. And I breathed. One day, the last letter from Ignatius arrived. I didn't realize it mystically. The envelope was just thicker than usual, the handwriting trembled, and Renata said, you better read it. It contains a waiver of further claims, and it seems an attempt at confession. We were in my office. They were loading pallets. Outside. Life was buzzing, as always. I opened the letter. He wrote that he was tired, that Milolika had betrayed him, that he remembered the conference hall every night, that he saw Varvara's photo on the charity run, in the news, that she looked like me, that he wasn't asking for a meeting, but wanted me to know he understood what he had lost. I finished reading. Renata asked. And I folded the sheet. He's writing about himself again. Will you answer? Yes. I took a clean sheet and wrote one line. You didn't lose us, Ignatius. You lost. The right to say we. I didn't write to him again. That evening we had dinner all together. Mom brought a pie. Valeri dropped by. With documents and was forcibly seated at the table, Renata argued with Lev about whether the child could have a second serving of ice cream. Varvara showed how she could read signs backward. Noise, crumbs, the clinking of forks, someone's laughter, the cat under the table trying to steal fish. I looked at them and suddenly realized Ignatius wanted to take my life away as property. To sign, register, appropriate, write off. But life isn't an apartment or a share in a company. It cannot be stolen completely if at least one sound remains inside that you hold on to. Back then, it was Varvara's cry. Then the doctor's voice. You are not dying today. Then my own voice in the conference hall. Continue. I didn't become a saint. I didn't forgive everyone beautifully. I didn't start less, believing that pain makes people better. Pain makes things hurt. What makes people better are the decisions made after it. My decision was simple. Not to die, not to stay silent, not to let them call a crime, a family drama. On the wall of my office now hangs not my father's portrait, as before. His portrait is at home, where it's warmer. In the office, there is a small child's palm in a frame, Varvara's print from the maternity ward, made after everything, when we finally walked out of the service wing into the light. Under the frame is a plaque without pathos. A document is more important than a rumor. Every time someone comes to me with a beautiful speech and an offer that's too, I fast, I look at that palm, and remember. Evil often doesn't come with a scream. It comes with a bouquet, with a power of attorney, with the phrase I'm just looking out for you. And if you have to explain to a person why you shouldn't be destroyed for their convenience, don't explain, collect evidence. Because one day the door will open. Everyone will be looking at him. He will start talking about love, illness, emotions, pressure, circumstances, and you will walk in calmly, even if it still hurts inside, and you will say just one phrase. Continue. You stopped at my incapacity, and that will be enough for the music to turn off. Hello, friends. I always listen to and share true stories from different corners of the world, the kind that make you want to be silent for a long time, and then finally tell the truth. Do you think Aksinya acted harshly, or is that exactly how you should answer those who hide betrayal behind words about family? Write in the comments what you would do in her place. Give a person squirting, like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your own story. Let the viewers decide, together, where there was love, and where there was just a hunt for someone else's life.